During the third day of hearing at the International Court of Justice, the Cuban delegation accused the Israeli occupation of committing massacres against the Palestinian people and denounced the United States of complicity in the massacres committed in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, in Palestine, an Israeli strike on residential building in Deir Bala killed at least 25 people in the central Gaza Strip. And on this second day of hearing on Julian Assange's extradition, Stella Assange claimed attempts against her husband are criminalization of journalism and truth. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. During the third day of hearing at the International Court of Justice, the Cuban delegation accused the Israeli occupation of committing massacres against the Palestinian people and denounced the United States of complicity in the massacres committed in the Gaza Strip. The jury of the International Justice Organism continues to hear the arguments of the different countries condemning the actions of Israel for its illegal actions of foreseeable occupying the Palestinian territories. Several representatives of the Caribbean countries gave their position on the silence of the international community and the complicity of the United States in sponsoring the siege that Israel maintains in Palestine. The representative of the Cuban delegation, Ana Yancy Rodriguez, denounced the Tel Aviv regime of committing apartheid in the occupied Palestinian territories.
The Palestinian people, its girls, boys, women, and civilian population as a whole, continue to be massacred due to the illegal use of force by Israel, the occupying power. All this takes place with the complicity of countries such as the United States of America, responsible under international law for genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the apartheid regime that determines where people can live, work, and move around depending on their ethnic and religious backgrounds.
The Cuban representative pointed out that the Israeli occupation disrespects the principles of equal rights and self-determination of peoples established by the United Nations.
This treaty, of which the Statute of the International Court of Justice is an integral part, establishes in Article 2.4 that every state shall refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any states, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purpose of the United Nations. The Charter itself, in Article 1.2, recognizes as one of its purposes respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, which are systematically and flagrantly denied to the Palestinian people. These violations of general customary international law stand erga omnes.
Russia accused the United States before the International Court of Justice of maintaining an irresponsible approach that has weakened the political processes to resolve the Israeli occupation in Palestine. During his speech, the Russian ambassador to the Netherlands, Vladimir Evgeniyevich Taravin, assured that the current wave in the Middle East is the result of ignoring the United Nations Security Council resolutions. The diplomat accused Washington of sending military supplies to Tel Aviv, causing a greater tension before the international community for the resolution of the conflict between the Israeli regime and Hamas. In this context, the High Diplomat pointed out that the Tel Aviv regime continues to carry out illegal aggressions against the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. In Palestine on Wednesday, an Israeli airstrike on a residential building in Deir al-Balah killed at least 25 people in the central Gaza Strip. According to local media, among the victims of the bombing were are 4 women and 4 children, and so far the number of wounded is unknown. It should be noted that also on Tuesday, 6 people were killed after an attack on a vehicle in the same locality. On the other hand, the health authorities announced that in the last 24 hours, Israel committed 11 massacres, killing 118 civilians and wounding more than 163 locals. In this regard, Gazans warned that meanwhile hundreds of corpses remain in the streets and under the rubble, the Israeli army prevents rescue teams and residents from reaching them, while the latest overall death toll stands at 29,708 since October 7th. Israeli troops killed 3 Palestinian militants during an overnight raid in the northern West Bank city of Jenin. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed at least 1 death in the Israeli operation, the latest in a month-long military offensive across the occupied West Bank. An army release said IDF soldiers detained 14 people, killed 3 and shot down others. Meanwhile, the official Palestinian news agency Wafa said that Israeli troops stormed the town of Jenin overnight, besieged 2 houses and provoked violent clashes during which 3 Palestinians were also injured. Wafa added that the army hit a house with a missile in the adjacent refugee camp ICE. The Israeli siege against Gaza has left 1.7 million people displaced. More than half of them are children who face the consequences of genocide. According to international organizations, the conflict has continued to escalate in recent months and has made the Gaza Strip the most dangerous place in the world for children. All children in Gaza have been exposed to profoundly painful situations and have witnessed horrors that no child should ever have to witness. Families desperately seeking shelter are forced to move to very small, overcrowded areas that lack adequate water services and where food and protection are also hard to find. The small amount of food available is not enough to meet the nutritional needs of children, and as a result, thousands of children are suffering from disease and malnutrition. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In a solidarity act of accompaniment, Stella Assange claimed that attempts to extradite her husband, jailed WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, to the United States to face espionage charges for publishing secret military and diplomatic files are a criminalization of journalism and truth.
What they're trying to argue is that state secrets trump revealing state crimes. This is the balance they're trying to shift. They want impunity, they don't want to be scrutinized, and journalism stands in the way. And in that courtroom, they are having to make their position increasingly clear. They have to admit that what they're doing is criminalizing journalism, is criminalizing the truth. They are liars, they are criminals, and they are persecuting the journalists who expose them. Julian is a truth teller, he is a political prisoner. And the world is watching these courts and how they deal with this case.
In Argentina, several press unions and other popular organizations held a rally in the Plaza de Mayo in support of Australian journalist Julian Assange.
There is no doubt of what Assange has done, and therefore what is at stake with the imprisonment and, according to various UN agencies, the torture of Assange and his arbitrary imprisonment, what is at stake in precisely access to information.
A representative of the Comité for Julian Assange in Argentina assured that the United States wants to take revenge on Assange for showing the side of the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan that the world didn't know about.
The United States Armed Forces want revenge for having leaked information that was sensitive for them, but that allowed millions in the world to understand the war crimes that were being committed at that time by the Bush administration. Tony Blair, who was the President of England, the Great Britain, and the entire coalition that accompanied the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan.
In Brazil, representatives of several popular movements protested demanding freedom for journalist Julian Assange. Activists and organizations in Rio de Janeiro rallied in front of the United Kingdom Embassy, demanding the release of the WikiLeaks founder, detained since 2019 for revealing U.S. war crimes. The mobilization is part of a global action that seeks to prevent his extradition to the U.S. territory. If Assange's appeal fails in the British courts, he will have exhausted all avenues of appeal in the United Kingdom. However, his defense highlighted that a final appeal to the European Court of Human Rights is still possible.
Estamos unidos y en comunión con todo el mundo que no
We are
puede
united
continuar
and in
su
communion
persecución
with the whole world
por estos
that cannot
gobiernos.
continue to bear the crimes committed by the United States, crimes that were disclosed to the whole world through a courageous journalist who swore to tell the truth and told the truth, and because of that, he is being brutalized.
La persecución internacional
The
contra
international persecution against Assange is a consequence of the revelations he made about the wars, denouncing war crimes.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets with Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in the country's capital amid a diplomatic crisis between Brazil and Israel over the war in Gaza. U.S. Secretary of State landed in Brazil on Tuesday for his first trip to the South American nation, arriving in the middle of a diplomatic friction after President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva enraged Washington ally Israel by comparing its Gaza campaign to the Holocaust. The comparison outraged Israel, which declared Lula persona non grata. President Joe Biden has been Israel's key backer, with the United States on Tuesday vetoing again a ceasefire call at the Security Council. For the top U.S. diplomat, the belated first trip to the Latin American power had been seen as an opportunity to build ties in a break from his exhaustive trips to the Middle East. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held a meeting with his Brazilian counterpart, Mauro Vieira, on the sidelines of the meeting of foreign ministers of the G20 member countries, which is being held in Rio de Janeiro. During the meeting, the two diplomats exchanged views on current issues on the bilateral and international agenda. They also reviewed the schedule of contacts at different levels, among other issues of common interest. According to a statement from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the parties reaffirmed their mutual commitment to further strengthen all Russian-Brazilian ties. Brazil is the third and final stop for Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Latin American tour, which has also taken him to Venezuela and Cuba, where he started his tour. In Brazil, the governor of Rio de Janeiro, Claudio Castro, declared a dengue epidemic in the state after 49,450 cases and 4 deaths were recorded since the beginning of the year. At a press conference, Governor Carioca emphasized the importance of working calmly, but emphasized that declaring the state in emergency would provide faster service. He also warned about the approaching difficult days and months. It is estimated that some 150,000 cases could be confirmed up to May. On Wednesday, Argentine railroad workers announced they will remain on the streets on strike after failing to reach an agreement with the government of Javier Milei for wage increase. In this sense, representatives of the driver union pointed out that they did not reach an agreement with the national government since it did not dictate the adjustment of the purchasing power as measure to face inflation. In this sense, the railroad sector indicated that they will continue with the measure of strike and there will be no trains at any point of the country until Thursday's midnight. In this sense, unions representatives assured the strike has been almost completely complied due to the they consider the government's proposal to the demands of the train drivers insufficient. The Vice President of Communication, Culture and Tourism of Venezuela, Freddy Alfred Nazaret Ñañez Contreras, denounces the strong U.S. media campaign against his country and the alleged linkage of an armed band in the northern country. He denounced the rendition of a media campaign against Venezuela that directly affects Venezuela's migrant population. With paid posts like this one from that Voz de America, which is the spokesperson for the White House, and a swarm of right-wing bots and influencers, it is intended to inoculate a dangerous matrix of opinion that fallaciously links Venezuelans with armed gangs operating in the U.S. The new wave of xenophobia is accompanied by an implicit threat from the empire that, since Obama's decree, seeks to stigmatize Venezuela. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our website community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday in India, police officers repressed with tear gas farmers marching to demand legal warranties for their production. The farmers resumed the march after failing to achieve results they consider acceptable in the negotiations with the government. The sector is demanding an agreement that establishes favorable crop prices for products such as legumes, corn and cotton for the next 5 years. Farmers trying to make their way to the Indian capital from the neighboring states of Punjab and Haryana have been pressing on the outskirts of the Indian capital for a week. However, police forces fired tear gas shells at the protests as they tried to approach towards New Delhi. On Wednesday in Pakistan, the Pakistan Muslim League and the Pakistan People's Party confirmed the agreement to form a new coalition government in the country. The agreement marks the end of the political deadlock in Pakistan, where the authorities will have until February 29th to convene the first parliamentary session to decide on the new government. It should be noted that no political party obtained a simple majority in elections, which forced the parties to unite in order to come to power. But the lack of consensus had given rise to an uncertain scenario. Precisely, local media highlighted that the latest elections in Pakistan are facing allegations of electoral fraud, as a senior official resigned from his post on Saturday after taking responsibility for the manipulation of election results in at least 5 districts in Punjab province. In Spain, the 31st Criminal Court of Madrid decrees the acquittal of José Manzaneda, coordinator of the digital media Cuba Información and of Euskadi Cuba. The sentence comes 4 days after a public hearing in Madrid in which Manzaneda and Euskadi Cuba were accused by the president of the Association Prisoners Defenders, Javier Larrondo, considered a detractor of the Cuban government. The court in Madrid also ordered the head of Prisoners Defenders to pay part of the cost for his recklessness and bad faith by maintaining that accusation lacked grounds. In a statement, the defense attorney recalled that the private prosecution was asking for 6 years in prison and a fine of 8,400 euros for the journalist. The criticisms of the so-called anti-Castro focused on the medical collaboration that the Cuban government carries out in several countries of the world. In Albania, opposition demonstrators protested violently outside the government building to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Edi Rama. Several protesters were arrested after some threw incendiary devices at a police cordon. The protest in tyranny was organized by the Democratic Party of former Prime Minister Sali Berisha, who is currently serving a sentence of house arrest for corruption offenses. The protest was called on the anniversary of the fall of the communist government of Enver Hoxha on February 20, 1991. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.